นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังกุณุตรังอุปัชฌายังนามาสามิ Is that loud? Can everyone outside hear me? It's okay. Okay. Today is a unique day, a very much overused word, but it is a unique day in my monastic career. It's the first time in 35 years that I've participated in the Pawarana ceremony in a different monastery to the one in which I entered, the Rains Retreat. And as for many years now I've been living alone, this is very enjoyable occasion for me, and one brings back a lot of old memories from previous lifetime when I was living at Wat Nanachat. And I think here also, as I understand, it's that usually the custom would be to invite all of the monks and novices to give Dhamma Talks. And in Wat Nanachat, of course, there's the extra kind of frisson amongst the monks and novices, because very few of them can speak Thai. And so getting up onto the Dhamma seat and giving a talk is even more challenging than it might be here. And some of them very bravely try to start off in Thai at least, and then switch to English when they run out of words. But all the lay people make a special effort to be there for them all through the night. And when they run out of things to say, then people shout out questions like, "Where do you come from?" and "Why did you become a monk?" And the favorite is, "Can you eat sticky rice?" That's of major import too. And it's a kind of an end of term feel in the monastery. Many of the monks will be after the katina will be leaving and going off in different directions. And we used to do this in so many different ways. We used to start off going down the line, and then at some point, I don't know whether it was still, we started to do it with doing it more like a lottery. Otherwise, the poor people at the end of the line are sitting there sort of all tense and worried all through the night. So we would have it a bit more random. And my first pansa as a monk in 1980, I was staying in a little monastery out in the countryside, and there were a number of teenage novices there, and they were all very keyed up, because for most of them were from the local village, and they knew their mums were going to be there as well, and often their dads. And one of my first memories of these Pansa nights was of this little novice who'd spent at least 2 weeks, hours a day on his Jongkrom path, memorizing the whole of an Ajahn Mahabua Desana. And I don't know if you know, Ajahn Mahabua is the most fierce of all the forest Ajahns, and this little boy of about 11 years old, sort of skinny and tiny. And so it came his time, and he got up onto the Dhamma seat at a tamat, and it was like his voice dropped 2 octaves, and it just, he metamorphosed into like a miniature Ajahn Mahabua, and he had all the gestures, and it was really, and he spoke really fast, and he was going, and then he got to that point, about 15 minutes in, when suddenly he stopped and he froze, and he looked around him, it's like a sort of a kryptonite lizard had jumped on his shoulder or something, and he couldn't. And then he looked down and he saw his mum, and he started to cry. And there was the tears, and he got down from it. So that was the most memorable of my. And then I've jumped forward a few years, another Thai monastery, and a friend of mine, same reigns as me, Thai monk, and he was also. You get like 3 and 4, 5 years as a monk. A lot of monks just they just want to give talks. They want to teach, So you try to stop them doing that, but then like the night of Ork Pansar is when they get their chance. And he'd been same thing, walking meditation and preparing and a really big thing for him. There was a lot of people there, 100, 200 people. And so it's his turn, and he got up, and he was, he looked the part. He's very big for a Thai monk, and he launched into this really profound discourse, and it was going into the Paticcasamuppada and all this kind of stuff. And he was so bound up with it. Unfortunately, he had a bit of a cold, and so he was giving all this Dhamma, his really high Dhamma, and quite unconsciously he was, and so the next leg of the Paticcasamuppada is like this, and he go on, and the contrast between the Dhamma he was teaching and this, there's sort of the saffron robes and going silver up here, and he couldn't understand why he wasn't getting the response that he was expecting. Yeah, so one of the advantages of ordaining in the Thai Sangha rather than the Burmese Sangha is you're allowed to laugh. In Burma, it's a real taboo about monks laughing. So you have to sort of be, if you're a proper monk, you can smile a little bit, but here we're allowed to smile, but we're not supposed to show our teeth. But then if you get really senior, you can do that as well. So we have these times when we have great time, and Ajahn Chah, of course, teaching the Westerners, was very well aware of the value of sense of humor in teaching, particularly as the Western monks tend to suffer from certain amount of self-importance, and that use of humor is a very good solvent of self-importance. And it's not that Ajahn Chah told jokes as such. He was just able to point out the humorous side of things, the humorous side of life, and to enable the Western monks in particular to laugh at themselves. In fact, this did cause some kind of jealousy amongst the Thai monks, because when he was with the Thai monks, he was a lot more sort of the traditional Thai Ajahn. And when then all the Western monks would be there, everybody's laughing and looking really relaxed, and they would think, why can't we have that? But Ajahn Chah was like the doctor. He realized what the antidote for each person or each group of persons would be. And somebody said to him, "Can you speak any languages other than Thai?" And he said, "I can speak lots of languages. I can speak the language of the villagers, I can speak the language of merchants, I can speak the language of soldiers, I can speak the language of civil servants. He said, I can speak lots of languages. So he had that ability to adapt his teaching, and he didn't need to tell jokes in a talk for people to enjoy them. I mean, it's some monks will do that. Just tell jokes for a cheap laugh. I mean, I could say something like, I heard that a scarecrow got awarded the Nobel Prize for being outstanding in his field, but that wouldn't be an appropriate thing to put into a Dhamma talk. So I wouldn't do that. And it's the same with with any teacher, that they are able to clarify the Dhamma, inspire through their words, to energize the people who listen to it. But fourthly, the quality of a teacher that the Buddha pointed to was the quality of gladdening the listeners. So you probably observed so many of the discourses. At the end, the monks were gladdened by the talk, and that's the beauty of the Dhamma, the beauty of the truth. That for those of us with a moral foundation and with an appreciation of and a love of truth and virtue, that hearing, listening to someone whose own life is devoted to development of truth and virtue, describing those qualities, we feel gladdened. And that sense of gladdening and being able to gladden your own mind is an important part of Dhamma practice. So the listening to the Dhamma and being gladdened by the Dhamma of great teachers is a wonderful thing. And the opportunity to listen to the Dhamma and to read the Dhamma and to hear Dhamma is wonderful. But we need also to listen to our own Dhamma and learn how to be gladdened by it. And the meditation techniques which employ discursive thought in a disciplined way are very effective means of gladdening the mind. The practice of meditation really takes off with the abandonment of the hindrances, and the quality of mind that is prominent in one who goes beyond the hindrances is pamoja, or the sense of intense well-being, and that matures into piti, bliss. But pamoja is a good start. So whatever meditation technique you use, it has to go through this path of pamoja, well-being. And sometimes plugging away at the mindfulness of breathing is unable to produce that pamoja. And so we can bring to mind certain truths and perceptions which can very swiftly and effectively produce that feeling. One is the reflections which come under the umbrella term of jakanusati. It's the recollection of jaka, of goodness, and the acts of kindness and generosity and renunciation and sacrifice that you have performed in your life. And I think there is an admirable sense of modesty in most meditators, and a fear of getting puffed up and or thinking we're special. But that's often taken too far. And we don't rejoice in the goodness in our lives as much as we should or could. And the willingness and effort to rejoice in our goodness is not a means of repressing or denying the defilements in our heart. It's not taking an overly sunny view of our mind, but we do have this resource within us, which I feel is very much underused. So if we cast our mind back to any occasion in which we have given something without expectation of reward, it's very apparent that we feel an immediate sense of uplift and well-being, even though that particular act may not have been particularly significant, or anything that we might think particularly special in a worldly sense. But even if it took place 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the moment we recollect in tranquility that goodness and that virtue, the mind is uplifted, the sense of well-being is produced, and the suppression of the hindrances can take place. The reflection, recollection of sila is similarly powerful. If we keep all 5 precepts well, and we keep them not because we're afraid of some punishment, not out of desire for some heavenly rebirth, but we keep them because we recognize that they form the most effective and maturing kind of training and education of our conduct, one which creates a sense of trust, harmony, safety, mutual respect in our families and communities, and one which eliminates the sense of guilt and anxiety about our actions, and allows us to be a good friend to ourselves. We begin to like ourselves because we have chosen freely to restrict our behavior and our speech, and we are able to maintain the standard that we've taken upon ourselves voluntarily, even in the midst of difficulties and temptations. So that sense of self-confidence that comes from being able to maintain a standard of conduct independently of surroundings. It is that which gives us sense of well-being. And I think in America, you have these great, really good external aids to keeping the 5 precepts. Every time you cross the road, you have these red hands saying, keep the 5 precepts, like this. So remember that. Every time you cross the road, remember that's a reminder of the precepts. And keeping them and recollecting them and rejoicing in sila, the good sila. This is something which produces this sense of well-being and happiness. So in meditation practice, when we see that the going beyond the 5 hindrances is the first preliminary goal, then the whole discussion and the distinctions and arguments about samatha and vipassana, I think, fade into insignificance, because if you, for instance, if you're applying your mind to a meditation object, and your mind is really disturbed, and you look at the causes for that disturbance, and you see that your inability to focus on the meditation object is the result of some careless, harmful speech. So you conclude from that, well, yes, there is a real connection between the care and attention that I put into my daily life and the way that I relate to the people around me and my experience in meditation. So that's wisdom, isn't it? That's a wisdom that has arisen, understanding that has arisen through the effort to concentrate or to focus upon an object. So we can say that there's the samatha aspect and the vipassana aspect, or the cooling and the wisdom aspect there together. Similarly, if the mind does put down all of its obsessions and preoccupations temporarily, and experience a state of clear, bright tranquility, then coming out of that state, then and reflecting on the experience of that state, then one's attitude to worldly pleasures changes. We've all paid lip service to, we've all heard since we were children that true happiness lies within, but nobody really believes it. Not until you've experienced it. You can't believe it really. When it comes to the crunch, you go for the easy pleasure. But when you've experienced that inner peace and the happiness, the refined and sublime happiness, then the normal pleasures of life seem much less attractive. It's not that you want to give them up altogether, or you're indifferent to them, but they're not so compelling. You don't have that same kind of neediness. You don't have that sense that you must have these things or else, or they're not so strong that you're willing to harm others or yourself in your pursuit of them. So this is a life-changing experience. So is it samatha or is it vipassana? If your whole value system is changing, your goals, your way of life is changing through an internal experience during meditation, do we call that peace or wisdom? Or, as Ajahn Chah said, it's just called Dhamma practice. It's the Dhamma. And we don't have to make those hard and fast distinctions. Because sometimes you look at your mind and you say, what does my mind need right now? And sometimes it wants to think. And you put your mind on your breath, it rebels. It just doesn't want that. And you say, okay, fair enough. I'll employ one of the meditation techniques which use thinking. You want to think, you can think, but you have to think about these things in this order, in a disciplined way. And when you think in that way, then the agitation of the mind reduces and passes away. And then you can, if you wish, return to the breath or the object that you usually employ. I have a meditation tip or technique, I think that is good fun. So this is a kind of fun night. So I'll tell you a fun meditation. Some of you, probably a few of you, know there's a very well-known BBC radio program. So maybe here you don't know it, but it's called Just a Minute. And Just a Minute features various articulate guests who are given the task of talking for 60 seconds, for 1 minute, without pause, without hesitation on a particular subject. And the moment they pause or repeat themselves or hesitate, then there's a buzzer and someone else takes over. So it's a very fun program. But why I'm telling you this is, often we can get this idea that thought is an enemy, and get very oppressed with thought, or feel like meditation is really hard work and tough because we have to deal with this thinking, and we don't really want to anyway, but to do it like bitter medicine. But what I would suggest is, rather than meditate and think you're not going to think, give yourself the task of thinking. This is a thinking meditation. Think in a stream for 60 seconds without pause, without hesitation, without repetition, and see how long you can do it. It's almost impossible. And what's really interesting is that if you just try to keep the thinking going, after more than a few seconds, it's gibberish. And you have this interesting experience of consciously, intentionally thinking gibberish. So that sense of consciously thinking, is something which appears so much like self. It's so much like who I am. But you're thinking with this strong sense of this is me thinking, but the content of what you're thinking is utter rubbish. And it's something you should try. It's really to have some perspective on thinking and to realize to what extent how when we are thinking in ways which we think are more rational are probably not much different from that, in fact. Now, the practice of Dhamma is not to be restricted, of course, to posture. But if that's the case, then what is the overall kind of structure or approach to Dhamma practice that would include all of our experiences in daily life? And I believe that that a very useful structure is one given by the Buddha himself, and it's the 4 right efforts. So in our Dhamma practice today, rather than thinking how many minutes did I sit or how many hours did I sit, then we're looking at it in terms of effort. So your effort is to prevent the arising of unarisen akusala dhammas, and when that's not possible, or when some defilement has crept into the mind, then the effort is to eliminate that unwholesome Dhamma. The effort is to bring into the mind wholesome Dhammas that have not yet arisen, and to care and nurture those that have arisen, and to bring them to maturity. So that is a practice which is possible in every situation. You can always, wherever you are, whoever you're with, whatever you're doing, you can always be putting in effort into one of those 4 categories. So if you're in a busy workplace in the city, then your effort is to protect the mind. So what are the kinds of unwholesome dhammas that could come into the mind? You're driving a car where you might get irritated with people who are selfish when they drive cars and act in unskillful and harmful ways. It's how can you prevent your mind from being irritated by events and by people who are, by all normal standards, irritating. So this is, you make this kind of resolution today. I will not be irritated by irritating people. That's your spiritual goal, you know. Or you go into a meeting and you know there's this man or this woman in this meeting and they're really obnoxious, they're so aggressive and overbearing and this and that, and you lose your cool with them every time. You tell yourself you won't. This is your goal. This is your Dhamma practice today. How can I use my mind? What kind of reflections? What kind of practice will protect my mind from aversion? Or you're in a shopping mall, and then how can I protect my mind from greed and from... it becomes a game and a sport and an interest. But you can't just be mindful. You have to be mindful of something. You have to recollect something, and clarifying before the case, before the event. This is the work of sampajanya, which works together with mindfulness. You're clarifying, what exactly do you want to be doing in this particular situation? What are the dangers? What are the unwholesome dhammas that usually often occur in this kind of environment? And how can I protect my mind from them in the best way? But given that I may well not be completely successful, what am I going to do if that does occur? What skillful means can I employ? What are the kind of wholesome dhammas can I bring into my mind in this situation? So, and if there are wholesome dhammas there, how can I protect them? So, going into a busy city and say, oh yeah, this is a really good opportunity to practice sense restraint. Yeah. Or when I like in airports, when everybody's rushing around, I like to try to think of specific good things to wish for people, rather than just sort of metta. I see someone who's rushing along, and I think sort of, may you be free from impatience. And then I saw, and somebody else is looking really confused and lost, and sort of, may they find their way home. And then I see a young couple walking along hand in hand, and I say, well, may you not be separated from the happiness you're experiencing. And so it becomes a game. It's a really good fun. You have to be quite quick. You sort of people coming and going and trying to come up with specific, beautiful things to wish for people. And so rather than being frazzled as you go through this busy place, you can really feel refreshed. And so you can also have, rather than just the specific ones, you can have all these really nice things that you can, you have a sort of a fund of them. So, walking along, say, may no one ever treat you with contempt. May no one ever treat you with disrespect. May people always believe you when you tell the truth. And so you can when you're in you've got a few minutes, rather than checking emails and doing all this kind of stuff, just come up with a few more sort of beautiful things that you can wish for strangers that you'll never see again in your life. And this is, just a practical way of protecting the mind from unwholesome dhammas, from developing wholesome dhammas. I was developing sense restraint, not looking left, looking right, not looking at advertisements. You make a resolution that if your eyes ever caught by an advertisement and you lose your mindfulness staring at it, that you won't buy any of that brand for the next week. Things like that. So it's waking up and putting effort into your life and realizing that we don't have to be the victim of circumstances. So we all have within us a capacity to clarify and to gladden our minds, and of course the wish to give and share is a wonderful pick me up, and that when that's developed. It's such a jewel of the mind. There's a wonderful verse by the Indian monk Shantideva, and he's saying that some people's minds are like pretas, like hungry ghosts, and others are like devas. And he says the preta's mind is something comes, and sort of you think maybe I should share it and give some away, and then you think, but if I was to give that away, then what would I have left for myself? This is the preta mind. And then the deva mind is, well, this is really nice, but if I was to take that for myself, what would I have left to give to others? You see, so it's a very different state of mind. And when you develop that mind of dana and jhaka, it just arises spontaneously and naturally, effortlessly. And that's a sign of great spiritual maturity, isn't it? Whenever you see somebody, you hear something, I'm sure many of you feel this. You hear about somebody doing something really good or some charity or something, and you immediately think, "Oh, I'd like to contribute to that. I'd like to be able to support that." And just after a while, it just becomes really natural, doesn't it? You just want to give and give and give, and that is long term. That's such a wonderful quality of the heart, and the Dhammas, the four Dhammas, which are instrumental both in heavenly rebirth and in stream entry, so surely of interest to everyone, are sattha, faith, sila, jhaka, and panya. So these are developing, making these goals of our life. And one great example of jhaka here tonight, Lumpur Pasano. I mean, I've experienced the fruits of all his jhaka and devotion and sacrifice over. Ajahn Pasano and I, we're very close, but we are very different. He's very. I'm hopeless at almost everything practical, and he's really competent. Like if we were both on a ship and it shipwrecked, okay, and we were washed up onto different islands, I'd be dead, within a day. Within a couple of days, Lumpur would have trained these monkeys to go out and pick bananas and offer them to him before 12 o'clock. That's the difference between us in a nutshell. I am the foremost monk in the whole Wat Pah Pong tradition at uselessness in building. I'm absolutely incompetent. I'm the kind of monk who couldn't even repair the chain on a push bike. I'm just absolutely hopeless. I mean, it's just best for everyone that I live by myself, really. But I do appreciate people who are competent and sacrifice. So I'm really happy to be here with my group and to offer some support for all the hard work which is going in here. And I was thinking earlier on, Luang Por, I heard this story before, but it's one that stays with me. It's when I was a younger monk, not so. It was one head shaving day, and I decided to see whether I could shave my head with just like a small glass of water and a big razor, and I was so proud of myself because I did it. And I was walking into I was feeling kind of, superior to all these other monks who are using all this water and proper razors and everything. I sort of swagger in and sit down. And Luang Por says, "You've got a bit of hair behind your ear." And I couldn't help myself. I said, "Do you realize that I just shaved my head with a big razor and just that amount of water?" And he said, "Yeah, but you've still got a bit of hair behind your ear." So I bowed and went out and shaved that bit off. And so so friends, I got a really important teaching from that. And that's the way that you sort of make peace with these kinds of embarrassing events. You try and get a teaching out of it somehow. So the teaching I got from this was that, this is quite an important point actually, and I'm going to just bring it up a level by referring to the suttas and the Buddha recounting the Dhammas which were directly responsible for his realization of Nibbana. Okay, couldn't be any more higher than that. And one of them was unremitting effort, and the other was discontent with the wholesome Dhammas that he'd already achieved. And so this sense of never being completely satisfied with the material support, but never satisfied with the spiritual progress, but always pushing on further and further. So, for us, of course, we have the teachings of the Buddha as a reference and and we have great teachers, but the Bodhisattva didn't have that at all. In fact, his first two meditation teachers, who were like the top men in India this time, they both said, you know everything that you need to know. You've done it all. Now you can be a teacher. And he didn't believe them. And so he was always pushing on. So even though his mind must be already before the Enlightenment, was so pure and so brilliant, he still pushed on further. So even though like 99% of your head is shaved, you see, you just got this one little bit behind your ear. You still have you can't just rest on your laurels and be proud of the fact that you've done this good job on your head. Yes, I know it's a bit of a tortured analogy, but anyway, the point that I really wanted to stress this evening was to create skillful framework for understanding your practice, and not to see it too narrowly. And the four right efforts, I think, provide a very useful reflection and help in that. And the practice is one, I would say, more than anything else, of observation and giving yourself the ability to learn from experience. And this is why, and not to be Puritan, but the problem with the technologies we have these days, and with line, I don't know if in America you have it, like all the Thai people have this line thing, is that that you're always following the stream of restlessness, and you're never able just to be. You're always about to do something, or having nothing to do or nothing in your mind is a lack, and you're always moving on to the next thing and the next bit of information, the next bit of stimulation. But the present moment, it's not that being in the present is the goal of Buddhist practice. My analogy here is that the present moment is the classroom or is the laboratory. If you want to learn the Four Noble Truths, you have to study the Four Noble Truths as a direct experience, not as a philosophy or a theory. The only place that you can study and learn and experience the Four Noble Truths is the present moment. So if the present moment is a problem, you're always trying to get away from it into the next thing, you're never able to comprehend the noble truth of dukkha and to see its cause. But the moment that you can be clear and bright and wakeful in the present moment, then everything becomes clear and plain. And today is the end of the Rains retreat, and it's an ending. And we're naturally much more interested in beginnings than endings. But the wisdom comes from opening our minds to endings. And in every day, we experience so many little endings, some pleasant feelings that end, unpleasant feelings that end, neutral feelings that end, they pass away. And often it's the ending of something that there's this can be quite a subtle sense of grief and loss. It's like a very subtle death. And just as in the sort of on the macro level, there's rebirth going on to the next life as long as there's craving. In the same way, in daily life, if we're not awake to this process, the moment there's an ending of something, there's this sense of, what next? What's the number one question of meditators when their mind becomes, what do I do next? What's next? And so we're always looking for the next thing. And we're not aware of the effect of endings. And so being in the present moment, you see, this ends, and it's sad. Yeah, there's the sadness of ending. And it's through being willing to open the mind to the sadness inherent in our life as human beings, the small little sadnesses that make up a normal daily life. But when we become willing to awaken to that sadness, then we develop a strength and an ability to deal with the major separations in our life. And they don't seem so frightening or desperate or fearful. It's not that they don't affect us, but we feel this is the very same thing that we're seeing moment by moment in our life, just on a bigger scale. It's not something, from somewhere else. It's not alien or strange or completely unexpected. It's the same thing, exactly the same thing. When we're separated from those we love, when we're separated from good health, when we're separated from all that we love and like, it's just the same thing that's going on a very small, subtle level on every day, every minute of our life. So it's not this mystic be in the now. It's like when you're in the now, when you're in the present moment, and you're in the present moment with this wise wakefulness, then you begin to observe, and it's not that you're consciously looking for things. The things are coming right there for you to see. Oh, this is how things arise. This is how things pass away. This is what happens when things pass away. This is how we feel. And that restlessness and that sense of lack and loss and wanting the next thing. And when we begin to focus on that, observe it more clearly, then that knowledge stays with us and we begin to see how it manifests in all areas of our life. So looking and listening. And it's the Buddha's great disciples are called the Sāvakas, the listeners. So learning how to listen to your heart. Often it's like we have this voice of wisdom within us, but we don't hear it because we're so tuned in to all this loud noise around us. But when we tune down that loud noise, then often we're surprised at how wise we are. You stop just for a while, and suddenly you realize, yeah, this is really not very, I shouldn't really be doing this. Oh yeah, this is something I should really, where does that come from? It's like it's there already, but you're so hooked into communicating with other people that you've forgotten how to communicate with yourself. And so making that a goal of quietening down all that noise and being present to what's going on with the attitude of the student, the learner. So the Arahant is called the Aseka Pugala, the graduate. And everyone else except for Arahant are still students. There are things that we need to study. There are things that we need to learn. And no one else can do this for us. No matter how much our family members love us, how much they would do for us, the most important things in life we have to do for ourselves. And this is the work that we need to devote ourselves to, and finding that kind of motivation. How do you sustain that kind of motivation to be doing this day in, day out, even though you don't see such huge progress? It's obviously you need that faith and confidence in the path. You have the examples of the great teachers who, you're not saints from birth, and they realize what they realize through effort. And Ajahn Chah would say this again and again. He said, I started off no different from any of you, but I just kept at it. I was patient. I never gave up. So one of my favorite stories of a monk who's walking on Tudong, and there's an old lady by the side of the road. And he said, Grandma, how long will it take me to get to the mountain? And she ignores him. She's knitting or something. And he says, Grandma, how far will it take me to get to the mountain? And she doesn't say anything. Grandma, 3 times, this Buddhist monk, 3 times. Grandma, how far will it take? She pays no attention. So he's walking on, and then she says, about 3 or 4 days. And he turns back and he said, why didn't you answer when I asked you? He said, well, I had to see how fast you were walking and how determined you were before I could answer. But the practice is one of enjoying the path. Don't wait for some happiness in the future. learn how to enjoy and appreciate and rejoice in the path itself and in the virtues that you're developing. If you're sitting for half an hour and you're agitated and it's really tough, then afterwards, reflect on the causes of that to try to prevent that happening again to what extent you can. But at the same time, just appreciate that's not easy, to sit there for half an hour, even though you're really agitated, and not get up and not make excuses. You've developed a sense of that patient endurance and resilience and not giving up. So there are always qualities that we can be developing and learn to appreciate and to rejoice in them. So I would like to wish all of you the patience and effort and joy in practice and all the results of the practice for your own welfare and for the welfare, happiness of your families and your communities, and for the growth and well-being of all the monastics and lay supporters of this monastery, the Lord Galanadha.